Hey there, it's me again, Michelle, and welcome back to the Canadian History, a Chronology channel. Today's episode, number 38, continues along the road towards Confederation and our fight for responsible government. This is part 2 of this mini-series. Now, like usual, before starting, let's take a quick moment to review what we saw in the last episode. And as a reminder, that episode was the first in this series and focused mostly on Lord Durham. In 1838, Lord Durham was named High Commissioner and Governor-General of all British provinces in North America. In December 1838, back in Great Britain, Durham submitted his report on the affairs of British North America. Then the Act of Union was proclaimed on February 10, 1841, merging Upper and Lower Canada into the new province of Canada with 2 regions, Canada West and Canada East, as well as other legislation, including making English the only language of government in the colony. Then in 1841, Kingston was made the capital city of the new province of Canada. Okay, now that the summary is out of the way, let's continue with this video and the triumphs of the moderate reformers as they pushed for responsible government. Well, unfortunately for the Tories and their election fixing and proclamations, the new United Province of Canada worked against them. The Union actually brought together like-minded reformers from both English and French Canada. And instead of submerging French-Canadian language and culture, the United Parliament actually entrenched these social differences. By now, Egerton Ryerson, the moderate reformer, was Chief Superintendent of Education and pushed through a revamped Education Act that established 2 independent school systems. Non-denominational public schools in Canada West, with provisions for separate Catholic schools, and religious schools in Canada East, which would be predominantly Catholic and French. And now with their own distinct education system, the French Canadians would never be anglicized. At this time, the leading French-Canadian moderate reformer was Louis Hippolyte Lafontaine. Lafontaine fought long and hard to gain responsible government in Canada and had enlisted the help of an equally determined English Canadian, Robert Baldwin. Together, these 2 men dominated the Assembly, and in the 1848 election, the reformers were swept into power. The governor, James Bruce, Earl of Elgin, called upon the members of the majority to take office and form a government. And as Lafontaine had more supporters in the Assembly, he was asked to lead. The date, March 10, 1848, is sometimes looked upon as the birth of democracy in Canada. Also in 1848, the British government amended the Act of Union to end the ban on the French language. Parliament then opened in Montreal the following January 1849, and Lord Elgin delivered the speech from the throne in both official languages, a key moment in Canadian history. Responsible government had been won, democracy broadened, and the French language would no longer be excluded. Assimilation as an official policy was dead. Now the questions to ask are, is responsible government finally here? And do the elected leaders have any real authority? Well, the first test was in 1849 with the Montreal riots. The Assembly attempted to pass a controversial rebellion losses bill that would compensate individuals who had suffered damages during the 1837 rebellions. Upper Canadians in Canada West had already been compensated, but in Lower Canada, Canada East, the English-speaking Tories didn't think the Patriots, or traitors as they called them, should be compensated. They demanded that Lord Elgin quash the bill, but he stood firm. This was an internal matter decided by members of an assembly that had been chosen by the voters. What a guy. Responsible government had arrived, both in principle and in practice, as Lord Elgin gave royal assent to the Rebellion Losses Bill on April 25, 1849. Well, the English Canadians in Canada East were not happy with that decision. A mob attacked Lord Elgin's carriage and then stormed the Montreal Parliament buildings, setting them ablaze. As good fortunes would have it, Nothing came of these riots. Lord Elgin just let the rioters tire themselves out. Now this raises a question. Why is Montreal not still the capital of Canada today? It was the central parliament at the time. Well, the Montreal riots didn't help, and then it became a question of the least objectionable place. As we saw last episode, Kingston was named the capital in 1841, but that ended in 1844 when Montreal became the capital. But that ended in 1849 with the Montreal riots. Then from 1849 to 1852, it was Toronto. Then it moved to Quebec City from 1852 to 1856. Then back to Toronto for 1 year in 1858 before returning to Quebec City from 1859 to 1866. Then in 1857, Queen Victoria chose Ottawa as the final capital city of Canada. And why Ottawa? Well, it was located on the river border between French and English Canada. It was also inland from the American attacks on the St. Lawrence, yet still linked to the Great Lakes by the Rideau Canal. And there was no intercity rivalry like that existed between cities like Toronto and Montreal and Quebec City. Ottawa wasn't even on anyone's radar. Okay, let's get back to responsible government for a minute. The province of Canada wasn't actually the first to achieve this claim. It was Nova Scotia. They actually beat the province of Canada by a few months and without riots, but they were ignited by the 1837 rebellions and the ensuing Durham Report. Joseph Howe, the editor of the Halifax newspaper, is considered as the father of responsible government in Nova Scotia. He didn't want a union with the inner colonies, but he did agree with self-government. Then in 1847, reformers led by Howe and James Boyle Uniacke won a solid majority in the Nova Scotia Assembly. The following February in 1848, they took office and became the first responsible government in British North America. Now, the union of Upper and Lower Canada was only a prelude to full Confederation. It was a trial run. The short-lived union would ultimately be a failure that ended in parliamentary gridlock and a colony more divided than ever. But the United Province of Canada did have some successes. It had a formal school system established in both English and French Canada. Canada strengthened ties with the United States with the 1854 Reciprocity Treaty. The seigneurial system was finally abolished in 1854. There was rail fever that encouraged the building of railroads, which led to further expansion and development. And finally, colonial self-government. Well, on that encouraging note, let's end this episode here. Please stay tuned for the next episode, episode 39, The Roads to Confederation, Part 3, where we look into the birth of British Columbia. Now remember, at any time, feel free to leave comments or questions below, and I'll do my best to respond to them all. And please, be a true Canadian and be polite. And if you like this content, give this video a thumbs up and click that subscribe button below to see more. And remember to hit the bell if you'd like to be notified of any new content. Thanks everyone, and have a great day. Okay.